Published its draft National Youth Policy for 2020 to 2030, outlining its plans to get more young South Africans into education and employment opportunities for the next decade. Now, the document states that the youth unemployment has reached crisis proportions in the country. Youth empowerment and education remains a major challenge facing South Africa. Students also need to make more informed decisions on their academic and career paths with a solid understanding regarding the different types of qualifications and credit scorings on offer. We're now joined in studio by Mr. Rais Khan. He's an education expert and executive director of Cintolox Strategic Consultants to share some insight about choosing courses and one's academic path. Good afternoon, Rais, and thank you for sharing your time on the SABC News Desk.
Thank you so much for hosting me. It's my absolute pleasure.
Well, it is a critical time for students embarking on the new academic year, and many will feel overwhelmed not understanding the qualifications or the different types of qualifications on offer. Can you just outline for us briefly the difference between a higher certificate, a diploma and a degree for that matter?
Okay, yes. So the first obvious difference is the duration of the courses. Where higher certificate ranges between 1 and 2 years, a diploma between 1 and 3 years, and a degree between 3 and 4 years. And this is due to the intensity of the course and also the type of credits that is associated with it.
All right. How do students begin to make more informed decisions when it comes to choosing between the three for that matter?
That's a very good question. And I think the key word there is informed decisions. Making decisions based on information. You know, usually we have students at a very young age starting at grade 10, 11, 12. They don't have much information about the world itself. Therefore, they make decisions under societal pressure or parental home expectations and pressure and not based on enough information. So my advice in that regard is to really seek information regarding the types of professions out there, really understanding the nitty-gritty of what does this profession actually do on a day-to-day basis. Many people, I get students coming to me and saying, Mr. Khan, you know, I want to be a nurse. I'd say, why do you want to be a nurse? They say, no, because I want to help people. I say, that's very noble of you, but have you spent 12-hour shifts, 13, 14-hour shifts in low-staffed environments, going home with those type of paychecks? Is that where you envision yourself? Really get down to the practicality of it and envision it.
Rais, I must ask you, because you work a lot on the ground with students, do you see a trend, and why this trend for South African children or learners to flock to institutions of higher learning like universities and so on, rather than choose artisan training, plumbers, boilermakers, etc., where there's actual need and learners can be placed in terms of employment opportunities?
Well, firstly, when you look at universities and higher education mainstream, accessibility is more open in that regard. The facilities are more equipped to deal with and handle student intakes, and a lot of your artisan training, the infrastructure, the funding opportunities are not as explicit. Therefore, it remains under the surface and maybe not accessible to students as much.
All right. Now, when it comes to students wanting to perhaps transfer from one varsity to another, one training college to another, how do they successfully transfer their credits from different institutions? I know that the National Qualification Framework and recognition of prior learning, this all comes into play here.
Yes. So it's a very tricky situation, especially when going from one institution to the other. Some institutions might not, although the qualification is in the same stream and the same NQF level, they might feel that the other institution's curriculum is not up to the standards of their own. And somewhat, if you ask me, it's an educational, political power play in some instances. So it's not.
So we're dealing with a lot
acceptable.
of perception at this level.
Precisely.
All right.
And recognition of prior learning, although it is policy of higher education institutions to acknowledge that, in many instances it's also not practiced in the manner it's supposed to, therefore acting as a barrier to entry in that regard.
All right. While we're on the topic of credits, there are many online courses becoming more and more available in the country, and these are offering certificates from global learning institutions, in fact. But these courses are non-credit bearing, Rais. So how can one wants to understand, how can this route benefit a student, taking into account that when you attend a job interview, they're going to look for credible qualifications?
Yes, so the economy in the fourth industrial revolution, it's revolutionized education in its essence. And I don't think it's much the education structure that's the problem, but I think the economy or the job, the business market that's not ready to acknowledge and accept these qualifications like massive open online courses as yet. So look, it's not that they don't serve their place. They serve a place for in-service training, quick skills such as coding, really keeping up to abreast with the trends of the fourth industrial revolution, you know, especially where accessibility is an issue. They can be valuable despite not being credit bearing.
While we're on the point of online learning platforms, RISE, offering certificates and diplomas, etc., what advice do you have for members of the general public out there who may be skeptical when it comes to the value and the quality of online learning? I mean, many might feel that this could be inferior to the face-to-face learning and teaching experience.
Well, we live in the fourth industrial revolution, and that's where it's going. Your learning, your experience, your interactions in the economy, in the business world is essentially online. And it's not that either is inferior to the other, but they're different. They each have their own unique pros and cons to them associated, and accessibility, flexibility, anytime, anywhere learning. And some researchers probably suggest or project that in 20 years from now, we might not have universities as we know them.
How can learners or students be sure that an institution is accredited and recognized online, even for that matter?
So when an institution, the first point of reference would be the institution, and actually query, you'd probably see on the website that we are accredited by these bodies or these institutions, and that should be associated with an accreditation reference number. Then the student can see, okay, this institution is accredited with the Department of Higher Education, Council of Higher Education, or the following CETAs. You can then verify that on the councils or higher education or CETAs page. They all have websites where you can access and actually really see the list of accredited providers.
Mr. Rice Khan is an education expert joining us on the desk this afternoon. Thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you.